Anger is like a fire. It flares up quickly, consuming everything in its path. When we speak in anger, our words are like sparks that ignite destruction. The Bible warns us in Proverbs 14:17 that a quick-tempered person acts foolishly. In the heat of the moment, emotions take control and rational thought fades. We say things we don't mean, but the wounds they cause can last a lifetime. Words spoken in anger cannot be retrieved. They settle deep in the hearts of others, shaping their perceptions, breaking trust, and leaving scars that may never fully heal. Moses, a man chosen by God, struggled with anger. In frustration, he struck the rock at Meribah instead of speaking to it as God commanded, Numbers 28:12. His anger cost him dearly. He was forbidden from entering the promised land. His outburst, though momentary, had long-term consequences. This is the danger of anger. It blinds us, making us act in ways that contradict God's will. When emotions take over, obedience takes a back seat. Our frustration drowns out divine instruction, and in those moments we become the architects of our downfall. The enemy knows how to manipulate anger, turning it into a weapon against us. He whispers lies, convincing us that we have the right to lash out, to defend our pride, to retaliate when hurt. But Proverbs 29:11 tells us, "A fool gives full vent to his anger, but a wise person holds it back." Wisdom is found in restraint. The world teaches that strength is in loudness, in fighting back, and proving a point. Yet, God teaches that strength is in silence, in self-control, in trusting Him to fight our battles. Jesus, the ultimate example of restraint, stood silent before his accusers. When falsely accused, mocked, and beaten, he did not defend himself. He did not retaliate. He remained silent because he knew the power of stillness. Isaiah 53:7 describes him as a lamb led to the slaughter, yet he opened not his mouth. His silence was not weakness, it was power. He understood that responding in anger would accomplish nothing. Instead, he let the will of God unfold. How many times have we spoken in anger when silence would have been the wiser choice? Every heated argument is a test. Every moment of frustration is a battlefield. The enemy wants you to react, to lose control, to destroy with your words. But James 1:19 instructs us to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. The discipline of silence requires spiritual strength. It is not passive. It is an active choice to surrender emotions to God. Holding back words in moments of anger is not suppression. It is wisdom. It is the awareness that emotions are temporary, but the damage they cause can be permanent. Silence in anger creates space for divine intervention. It allows God to work in ways our words cannot. When we refuse to speak out of rage, we give the Holy Spirit room to calm the storm within us. The Bible tells us in Exodus 14:14, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." The world tells us to fight, to prove ourselves, to make our voices heard. But God calls us to be still, to trust, to know that He sees all and will bring justice in His time. There is a great danger in anger. It distorts truth. It makes us see enemies where there are none. It makes us assume the worst, exaggerate offenses, and justify actions we would never take under normal circumstances. It turns moments into battlefields and relationships into casualties. Cain allowed anger to rule him, and it led him to commit the first murder, Genesis 4:6-8. Had he chosen silence, had he allowed himself to cool down, history might have been different. Many battles can be avoided with a single moment of silence. Many regrets can be erased by holding back a single sentence. When emotions are high, the wisest choice is often to say nothing at all. The battle is not against the person in front of you. It is within you, without all the facts. There is a danger in speaking before knowing the full truth. It is easy to assume, to jump to conclusions, to form judgments based on fragments of information. Yet Proverbs 18:13 warns us to answer before listening, That is folly and shame. How often have we reacted too quickly, only to realize later that we misunderstood the situation? Words spoken in haste cannot be undone. Assumptions lead to misunderstandings, and misunderstandings lead to broken relationships, damaged trust, and unnecessary conflict. King Saul acted without all the facts when he offered a sacrifice instead of waiting for the prophet Samuel. 1 Samuel 13:8-14. He saw the people scattering, feared the enemy, and took matters into his own hands, but he did not have the full picture. God had already set a plan in motion, and Saul's impatience cost him his kingdom. This is what happens when we speak or act without understanding. We try to take control, but in doing so, we step outside of God's will. Impatience, fueled by incomplete knowledge, leads to disastrous choices. The enemy thrives on misinformation. He uses half-truths, twisted narratives, and whispers of doubt to make us react rashly. He did this in the Garden of Eden when he deceived Eve with a distorted version of God's words. Genesis 3:01, verse 5. He led her to believe something that was not fully true, and in acting on that partial knowledge, she fell into sin. This is how the enemy works. He doesn't always give outright lies. He gives incomplete truths, knowing that acting on them can be just as dangerous as believing a lie. Jesus remained silent when he was falsely accused. Matthew 26:62-63. He knew the truth, yet he did not argue. He did not rush to defend himself. He understood that time would reveal everything. His silence was not weakness, it was wisdom. He did not waste his breath responding to falsehoods because he knew that the truth would stand on its own. How often do we feel the need to defend ourselves, to explain, to prove a point, only to find that silence would have been the better choice? Speaking without all the facts often leads to regret. We assume someone's intentions, misinterpret their words, or react emotionally to a situation we do not fully understand. James 1:19 instructs us to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. This is not just about patience. It is about wisdom. Listening first gives us clarity. It allows us to discern truth from deception. It gives God room to reveal what is hidden. Acting too quickly can destroy something that God intended to bless. There are times when silence protects us from unnecessary battles. Joseph, when he discovered Mary was pregnant, considered divorcing her quietly, Matthew 1:19. He did not react publicly, did not shame her, did not lash out. He waited. And because he waited, an angel appeared to him in a dream, revealing the truth. If Joseph had spoken too soon, he might have walked away from the greatest calling of his life. This is the power of restraint. When we pause, God has time to reveal what we cannot yet see. The world teaches us to speak quickly, to form opinions instantly, to react without hesitation. But Proverbs 17:27 says, "The one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever has understanding is even-tempered." True wisdom is knowing when to stay silent. It is understanding that not everything needs an immediate response. It is recognizing that words have weight, and once they are released, they cannot be taken back. Many conflicts could be avoided if people simply waited before speaking. Many misunderstandings could be cleared up if we took time to listen. There is a reason God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we would listen twice as much as we speak. When words may harm, words carry weight more than we often realize. A single sentence spoken in haste can break a heart, plant doubt, or create division. Proverbs 18:21 tells us, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue." Words have the ability to uplift or destroy, to heal or to wound. Once they are spoken, they cannot be retrieved. How many relationships have been shattered? How many lives have been altered because someone spoke without considering the consequences? There are moments when silence is the wisest choice. Job's friends came to him in his suffering, and at first they did the right thing. They sat with him in silence, Job 2:13. But when they opened their mouths, they only made his pain worse. They spoke without understanding, offering words that cut rather than comforted. This is what happens when we speak without wisdom. Our words, though meant to help, can become weapons that deepen the wounds of others. The enemy knows the power of words and how to use them against us. He used words to deceive Eve in the garden, Genesis 3:1-5. He used words to tempt Jesus in the wilderness, Matthew 4:1-11. He twists the truth, planting doubt, causing division. He provokes people to speak when they should remain silent, to react when they should wait. The enemy understands that once harmful words are spoken, they take root in the hearts of those who hear them. Jesus demonstrated restraint in the face of false accusations. When he stood before Pilate, he did not argue or defend himself, Matthew 27:12-14. His silence was not weakness but wisdom. He knew that words, when misused, could be turned into weapons. He understood that there are times when speaking does more harm than good, when defending oneself is not necessary, when the truth will be revealed in time. How many times have we felt the need to explain ourselves, to prove a point, only to realize later that silence would have been more powerful? Harmful words are not always loud. Sometimes they come in whispers, in gossip, in careless criticism. Proverbs 16:28 warns that a perverse person stirs up conflict, and a gossip separates close friends. Words spoken behind someone's back can destroy reputations, ruin trust, and sow seeds of discord. What is spoken in secret often has greater impact than what is said openly, for words travel, taking on new forms, twisting into something even more dangerous than the original message. Even well-intended words can cause harm if spoken at the wrong time. Ecclesiastes 3:7 tells us there is a time to be silent and a time to speak. A truth spoken without love can wound rather than heal. A correction given without grace can push someone further away rather than bring them closer to God. Not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every truth needs to be shared in the moment. Wisdom is knowing when to speak and when to be still. Words spoken in anger are especially dangerous. James 1:26 says, "Those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless." In the heat of the moment, emotions take control and the tongue becomes a weapon. Words are unleashed without thought, and in their wake they leave destruction. Apologies may be given, but the damage is often irreversible. The scar remains, the wound lingers, and the trust once broken is not easily restored. The tongue is small, yet it holds incredible power. James 3:05 compares it to a spark that sets an entire forest ablaze. A single careless word can ignite division, destroy relationships, and spread beyond what we can control. Silence, in certain moments, is not cowardice but strength. It is the choice to withhold words that may cause harm, to wait before speaking, to allow God to direct our words rather than letting emotions take control. Amidst gossip and quarreling. Gossip is a whisper that destroys in silence. It travels unseen, shaping opinions and breaking trust before the truth can even stand. Proverbs 16:28 warns, "A perverse person stirs up conflict, and a gossip separates close friends." It begins as something small, a casual remark, an observation shared in secrecy, but soon it spreads like wildfire. Friendships are torn apart, reputations are stained, and the unity that once existed is fractured beyond repair. The tongue, though small, wields the power to build or break, to unite or divide, and once words are released, they cannot be retrieved. Quarreling follows gossip like a shadow. Where gossip thrives, strife is never far behind. Arguments rise, misunderstandings deepen, and peace becomes a distant memory. James 4:01 asks, "What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? Many conflicts arise not from truth, but from twisted words, from assumptions, from half-heard stories that take root in the heart. People argue not over facts, but over versions of the truth, shaped by those who speak carelessly, fueling division where there should be unity. The enemy delights in gossip and quarrels, for they weaken the bonds God has created. He used words to divide Adam and Eve from God, twisting truth in the garden, Genesis 3:1-5. He used words to stir jealousy in Cain, leading him to murder his own brother, Genesis 4:6-8. He continues this work today, whispering lies, provoking people to speak in haste, to assume the worst, to judge before understanding. Every unguarded word is an opportunity for him to destroy what God has built. Jesus remained silent in the face of false accusations. When others spoke against him, when they spread rumors and sought to provoke him, he did not defend himself, Matthew 27:12. He understood that truth does not need to be defended with more words. It stands on its own. He knew that engaging in quarrels, feeding into gossip, only gives it power. Sometimes the greatest wisdom is found in silence, in refusing to participate in the cycle of destruction that words can bring. Gossip and quarreling do not only harm those being spoken about, they harm those who engage in them. Proverbs 26:20 says, "Without wood a fire goes out, without a gossip a quarrel dies down." Those who feed on gossip, who engage in endless arguments, who spread division, soon find themselves isolated, their own words turning against them. What is spoken in secret often comes back in the open, and what is used to harm others eventually returns to harm the speaker. There is a choice in every moment of gossip and conflict, to add fuel to the fire or to put it out. A single person refusing to engage can stop gossip in its tracks. A single voice choosing peace can end a quarrel before it spreads. Proverbs 15:01 reminds us, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." Wisdom is knowing when to speak, but even more, when to remain silent. Many battles are won not through argument, but through restraint. The cost of gossip is far greater than its momentary pleasure. The damage left behind is often irreparable. Trust once broken is difficult to rebuild. Relationships once fractured rarely return to what they once were. The Bible warns repeatedly about the dangers of the tongue, because words have a lasting impact. James 3:6 likens the tongue to a fire that sets the whole course of one's life on fire, a restless evil full of deadly poison. And those who understand the weight of their words choose them carefully, knowing that what is spoken cannot be undone. Quarreling is never truly about the argument itself. It is about pride, about the need to be right, about emotions that have not been surrendered to God. It is fueled by ego, by hurt, by the unwillingness to let go. Silence is often the strongest response, not because it concedes defeat, but because it refuses to let anger take control. There is no victory in endless arguments, no wisdom in words spoken without thought, no healing in gossip that wounds the innocent. When listening is needed. There is a time when silence speaks louder than words, when wisdom is found not in speaking, but in listening. James 1:19 commands everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Yet in a world that rewards loud voices and strong opinions, listening is often neglected. People rush to respond, to prove their point, to be heard above the noise, but few take the time to truly understand. There is great power in listening, for it reveals the heart of another, it builds bridges where words might create walls, and it opens the door for truth to be received. Listening is more than hearing words. It is about understanding the heart behind them. Job's friends came to him in his suffering, and at first they sat in silence, mourning with him, Job 2:13. But when they spoke, their words only deepened his pain. They assumed they knew the reason for his suffering, but they did not listen to his heart. Many do the same today, offering advice without understanding, speaking when silence would be more healing. True listening requires patience, humility, and the willingness to set aside one's own thoughts to truly hear another. There are moments when God speaks, but his voice is drowned out by the noise of the world. Elijah sought the Lord, expecting him in the wind, in the earthquake, in the fire, but the Lord came in a gentle whisper. 1 Kings 19:11-12. Many cry out to God, but fail to hear his response because they're too busy speaking. They ask for direction, for wisdom, for answers, yet they do not wait in stillness. The voice of God is often heard in moments of quiet surrender, in the willingness to be silent and listen. Jesus, though full of wisdom, listened before he spoke. When people came to him, whether seeking healing or truth, he did not interrupt. He allowed them to express their hearts before offering his words. The woman at the well, John 4:7-26, the blind beggar, Luke 18:35-43, the rich young ruler, Mark 10:17-22, each had a moment where they were fully heard before Jesus responded. There is something deeply healing about being truly listened to, about knowing that one's voice matters. This is the love Christ demonstrated, and it is the love believers are called to show. Many conflicts could be avoided if people simply took the time to listen. Proverbs 18:13 warns, to answer before listening, that is folly and shame. How often do people jump to conclusions, assume the worst, or respond in anger before they have even understood the situation? Listening does not mean agreeing, but it does mean valuing another enough to seek clarity before reacting. Many relationships have been destroyed not by what was said, but by what was assumed because no one took the time to listen. Listening is an act of humility, a recognition that one does not know everything. It requires setting aside pride, the need to be right, the urge to prove a point. Philippians 2:03 calls believers to do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. To listen is to put another before oneself, to acknowledge that their words, their feelings, their perspective matter. In a world filled with noise, where everyone fights to be heard, the ability to listen is a rare and precious gift. Even in prayer, listening is essential. Many come before God with long lists of requests, pouring out their desires, their struggles, their needs, but how many take the time to listen? Psalm 46:10 declares, "Be still and know that I am God." There are revelations that can only come in silence, wisdom that can only be received in stillness. The greatest prayers are not always those filled with words, but those spent in quiet surrender, waiting on the Lord's voice. The tongue is powerful, but so is the ear. Those who listen gain understanding, build stronger relationships, and walk in wisdom. Proverbs 19:20 advises, listen to advice and accept discipline, and at the end, you will be counted among the wise. Wisdom is not in how much one speaks, but in how much one hears. There is strength in knowing when to be silent, in holding back words that do not need to be spoken, in choosing to listen when others would rush to speak.